Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Heartway Church. You know, over the last couple of weeks during this time in preparation for the message, we have been doing something called Centering Prayer, which is a time where we get to connect with God through silence and through meditation. And today we're going to continue that practice, but it's going to be a little different. It's my turn to lead this part of the service this week, and I decided it would be really cool to connect us back to the Christian tradition and to the roots of our tradition through a practice called Lectio Divina. Lectio Divina simply means divine reading or sacred reading, and it's a form of meditation that engages the biblical text. You chew on the biblical text, you ponder on the biblical text, and most of us, when we think about the Bible or we think about faith and religion, we've only been taught to look at it through the eyes of our mind, with our rationality, through our intellect. We think we have to study and find out the secret code that needs to be discovered. But the whole purpose of Lectio Divina is for us to learn how to listen to the Word of God with the ears of our heart, and to learn how to tune in to the message that God may be speaking to you directly through the Scripture, deep down on the inside of your spirit. And so Lectio Divina is a very simple process. It was started in the 6th century by the Benedictine monks, and it's a practice that has continued to be a part of many different monasteries, and it's usually done in a communal setting just like this. But it's also something that you can do on your own, personally and individually, as you seek to engage with God through the Bible. And so Lectio Divina goes like this. We read a particular passage of Scripture, and I will lead us in that. I'll read it slowly. And after we finish reading that text, I'm going to invite you to reflect on a word or a phrase that sticks out to you from the reading. And that phrase or that word can become your mantra during that time of meditation. You repeat it to yourself silently over and over. You meditate on what those words may mean for you and what God may be speaking to you in this moment through that particular word or phrase that you've highlighted. After that moment of reflection, we then move into a moment of response. And that moment of response involves you quietly within yourself praying to God. And as a result of that reflection that you just did, you now get to give your worries and your fears and all of your cares, and you present your requests and you express your needs to God in prayer. And then after that, we take a moment to simply rest in the presence of God, without any words, without any thoughts, simply bringing attention to our breath. So we read, we reflect, we respond, and then we rest. And that's what we're going to do this morning. Is that okay? And I'll lead us in this. And again, this is very personal, and this is between you and God. So don't worry about anybody who's next to you in this moment. And as we begin, I just want to invite you to sit up on your chair. Close your eyes. If it's helpful for you to put your hands face down on your knees, to be grounded, or on your thighs, or if you want to have your palms facing up as a symbol of your receptivity to what God has for you in this moment. Begin to relax, enter into a state of rest. Bring attention to your breath. Breathe slowly. Allow your breath to be your anchor through this moment. Anytime you're distracted by your thoughts, gently bring yourself back to breath. And I'll be reading from Psalm 27. The scriptures say this: "The one thing I want from God, the thing I seek most of all, is the privilege of meditating in His temple, living in His presence every day of my life, delighting in His incomparable perfections and glory. That's where I'll be when troubles come. He will hide me. He will set me on a high rock, out of reach of all my enemies. Tell me what to do, O Lord. and make it plain, because I am surrounded by waiting enemies. Don't let them get me, Lord. Don't let me fall into their hands, for they accuse me of things I never did, and all the while are plotting cruelty against me. I am expecting the Lord to rescue me again, so that once again I will see his goodness to me here in the land of the living. Don't be impatient. Wait for the Lord, and he will come and save you. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait, and God will help you. Take some time here to reflect on a word or a phrase that sticks out to you. Set your intention in this moment and open up your heart to receive what the Spirit may be saying. Take some time now in this moment to respond to God through prayer. Any needs, any desires, any burdens that you may be carrying, now is the time to release. Now, as I read this psalm one last time, when I finish, I simply invite you to enter into a time of wordless communion with God, who is beyond all thought, who is beyond all words, who cannot be captured by our intellect, but who can only be found in stillness and in silence. Psalm 27. The one thing I want from God, the thing I seek most of all, is the privilege of meditating in his temple, living in his presence every day of my life, delighting in his incomparable perfections and glory. There I'll be when troubles come. He will hide me. He will set me on a high rock, out of reach of all my enemies. Tell me what to do, O Lord, and make it plain, because I'm surrounded by waiting enemies. Don't let them get me, Lord. Don't let me fall into their hands, for they accuse me of things I never did, and all the while are plotting cruelty. I am expecting the Lord to rescue me again, so that once again I will see his goodness to me here in the land of the living. Do not be impatient. Wait for the Lord, and he will come and save you. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait, and God will help you. Father, this morning we open up our hearts to receive from you. All right. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Everybody feel good? Ready to receive, ready to open up? So I want to begin today with a little show and tell. As you can see, I'm not alone on this stage. I have this. Oh, what happened here? Oh, it fell? All right. Yeah, well, okay. Hopefully this is not a fire hazard or something. Anyhow, look at this beautiful picture. Do you like it? My friend gave it to me. His name is Alex Yost, and he's an artist that I went to high school with. And now he sells paintings to celebrities and professional athletes, and he's based in Miami. He's got his art in so many different galleries, and he's doing an incredible job following after his dreams and producing good work through his art. And Emily and I went to visit him in his apartment over in Wynwood not too long ago, and he decided to give us this painting, which is super nice. And he said, all right, Danny, but here's the catch. I'm going to give you this painting. By the way, there's only 7 of 50, so I got lucky, all right? So he gave me this painting, but he said, Danny, here's the thing. If I'm going to give you this painting, you've got to preach a sermon on it. I said, all right, yeah, sure, no problem. So, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it until this week. And now we're here. And I thought, before I dive into this, how cool would it be if we could talk to the artist who created it and maybe get inspired by his journey, his life, his artistic expression, and see what that can do for us in our lives as we pursue the dreams that God has placed in our hearts. So I'm gonna tap into this, and I'm gonna get into this one. But before we do, help me welcome up Alex Yost to the stage as we talk a little bit about his journey. Always looking fresh, by the way. Look at those shoes. Love this guy. What's up, man?
How y'all doing? Glad to be here.
Thank you for doing this. By the way, Alex was like, "Hey, man, don't keep me too long up there." The whole talking thing. Like I draw. I don't do all that other stuff. But we've had some great conversations surrounding you and your journey and your art and everything you do. And part of what we do here at Heartway is I like to introduce y'all to so many of the cool friends that I have that are doing good work. So tell them about you and who you are and your story, your journey into becoming an artist.
Yeah, a little backstory. Like Danny said, I went to high school with him, or did you say that?
Yep.
Yeah. I played D1 golf in college, so I never thought art is literally the last thing I thought I would ever be doing.
Yeah, by the way, all of us who are friends with this guy who knew him since high school, we're like, when he started drawing, we're like, wait, what? You're an artist? You do this? That nobody knew. I don't even know if you knew back in the day. We just thought you're the golfer.
Yeah, exactly. So I turned pro when I graduated. I played a year on tour and got burnt out. Then I double majored in college, and I don't even know why I worked so hard, because I've never been one to want to do a 9-to-5 or be behind a desk. And I found this job on a boat, actually, and traveled through the Med in the Bahamas, working on a yacht as a first mate. Got tired of that, wanted to get off the water. And I had been dating a girl at the time that was, has everyone heard of Art Basel? Yes. Yeah. So I was dating a girl at the time. This is 6 years ago. She was an event coordinator down doing an event for Basel at Nikki Beach. Long story short, there was an artist she had hired to do a live piece, and he backed out like the very day before, last minute, and she couldn't find a replacement. And now, mind you, my girl at the time, she had no idea I could paint or draw, and at the time I hadn't done anything since like my high school art class. So it had been 6-7 years, and she's like, look, my job's on the line here. Can you pull this off? Because there was hundreds of people there, bloggers. But anyways, I went the day before to Michael's, and I bought a canvas and an easel, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I was Googling what's the easiest thing I could paint. And long story short, I pulled it off. I I painted Audrey Hepburn. It's a famous picture of her like smoking from The Breakfast Club. A lot of people, I'm sure you've seen it. But I was still working on the boat. I hadn't quit yet. So I remember I was going on a charter the next week after I had done the live painting, and I lost my Wi-Fi. Got over to Bimini, and I turned it back on, and had all these emails. It was like 30 emails from people that were at the event. Like, hey, loved what you did. Can you do a custom piece for me? Da 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 da. And I couldn't believe it, you know. And I was just like, wow, maybe I could make a career out of this. And I told the captain right there, I was like, hey, after this charter, when we get back, I'm gonna quit. And I did, and threw all my eggs into one basket. And now 6 years later, I'm painting full time, and it's shocking. Yeah.
Now, what's crazy is like I'm a big like basketball guy, and he puts up these pictures with like these NBA athletes in their home, all these paintings that can you name drop a little bit, or can I do it for you? For the basketball fans, at least for whoever's in back. Come on,
John
bro.
Wall is one of my biggest
John
clients.
Wall, you guys know John Wall. Some of y'all know.
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
this one I really liked because I'm a Miami Heat guy. Tim Hardaway, you know Tim Hardaway? His son, Tim Hardaway Jr. has
Tim
gotten
Hardaway
stuff from
Jr.,
you.
Stephen Curry. I mean,
Steph Curry?
Yeah, a lot of people.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
Tell him I said what's up, man. You know, actually, a funny story about Steph Curry. Before the Warriors were really good, this is so off topic, but before the Warriors had like won all their championships, I think this was 2014 or 2013. I was graduating from seminary school with my MDiv, and I was going to Kentucky for a class or for my graduation or something, and we stopped in Charlotte, and I came across him in line at a store. I was getting water before I get on the plane, and I didn't know it was him. So I just looked at this guy and I was like, "What's up, man? You look so familiar, bro." I thought he was somebody from LA Fitness or somebody that I played basketball with in high school. I'm like, "You look so familiar, bro." I'm like, "What's your name, man?" And then finally he was like, "Yeah, I play for the Warriors." I said, "Oh my God, that's so cool, man." And then we just started talking about the Heat because LeBron was doing good that year. Anyways, I blew my chance, but now I know we have a common friend, so you can help me get back in. Now, here's what I love about this, because it kind of seems like you stumbled into your purpose.
Yeah.
You stumbled into it, and like for me, like I'm a planner. I like to have everything figured out before I make a move. And this is just a reminder that like sometimes you got to throw your plans away, because life has a different plan for you, and God has a different plan for you. If you always have to figure it out before you go, you may never go. What you have to do is what this guy did, which is figure it out as you go. Scary, but it seems like that's what you did.
No, yeah. I mean, I've always been one to think about stability and whatnot, and you know, when I decided to go the art path, of course, my parents were like, you know, what are you doing? But I've been blessed. One thing's led to, you know, always spun into something else, and
you believed in yourself.
Yeah.
You believe in yourself to be able to do that, even when those voices in your life were telling you maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. So tell me about your art. What makes it so unique? Where do you get your inspiration from?
Well, one thing I've done in 2016, I get a lot of my inspiration from current events and wanting to give back. With every original and print I sell, I donate 20% to poverty or emergency, like, you know, current event emergencies, disaster relief funds and stuff like that. And it not only does it make me feel good, but it's actually increased my sales because, you know, everyone wants to do a good thing. Wow. So that's you know, a lot of my inspiration just comes from people and what's going on, and you know, a blank canvas is the beginning of anything we want as an artist. So it lets me manifest whatever I want to voice, and art's been a good channel to introduce me to the world. Yeah.
So what about like challenges you've come across? Because I know like your style is not the typical style, right? Like a lot of artists, they usually have like one kind of genre that they stick to, but you're kind of...
Yeah, right. I do portraits, I do landscapes, I do stuff like that, and it's helped me along the way because you know, I never turn down any jobs or commissions. A lot of artists, when they start off, they're honed into one thing, and I do it all, and I get criticized a lot for that by galleries because they want to see a unified work, and I like to just think of I've gone against the grain. I like to think that my signature on the bottom of every painting unifies my work, and that the range is what I would like to be known for.
I love that. Don't put limitations on yourself. Now, what are maybe some words of encouragement you have and words of advice you may have for people here? I mean, Heartway Church, we've got a ton of folks in their 20s and 30s and young families and people who want to be entrepreneurs. We got a bunch of creatives here in the house. What would you say to people who are wanting to take steps like you, but they're scared, they don't know what to do, they're getting criticized?
I never thought I would be here, like I said already, and so I guess just follow any passion that you have without any insecurities. Just don't give up. Yeah,
that's good. Come on, somebody, let's give it up for Mr. Yost. Appreciate your time, man. Thank you. I hope you enjoy the sermon. If you don't like it, well, sorry, buddy. So here we got this beautiful artwork, and it's called No Feelings. So that's going to be the title of my message today, No Feelings. And for everybody listening on the podcast, it's this beautiful picture of a heart that's being ripped apart by two hands. Half of the heart is mechanical. It's like a machine. The other half of it is flesh and blood. And there's a huge caution tape that is placed over the heart in this artwork. And I don't know about you, but when I look at this, it speaks very loudly. For me, particularly, it speaks to how a lot of us deal with our pain. When a lot of us deal with our pain, we choose to deal with it by numbing ourselves to it. Because when you've experienced so much hurt, when you've been through so much stuff, when people have continued to step all over you and rip your heart apart over and over and over again, every time you've tried to love, you continue to experience this brokenness and betrayal. That does something to you. Those feelings can become so overwhelming that eventually we just decide to opt out of feeling altogether. It becomes easier just to shut down in life. The scriptures talk about this as the hardening of the heart. And a lot of us grew up with this idea that hardening your heart is the strong thing to do. You got to be tough. Don't show your emotions. Suck it up. Don't be a crybaby. Don't ever cry in front of other people. You don't want to show vulnerability. You don't want to show weakness. And so eventually what we come to realize is we can play that game and we can pretend as long as we can, but the pain doesn't go away. Eventually we have to deal with it. And if we don't deal with it in a healthy way, we're going to deal with it in an unhealthy way. And those unhealthy coping mechanisms end up being things like excessive use of alcohol and drugs, or maybe we're going crazy with sex, or maybe we overwork ourselves, or we binge with our eating so that we don't have to face our reality. All we're doing, though, mind you, as we're continuing to push aside our pain, is simply amplifying it and making it even worse. For me, 5 years ago, I took a job as a chaplain at a homeless shelter called the Miami Rescue Mission. And we have a couple of centers in Broward, and I was working at the Broward Outreach Center. This year actually is the year that I transitioned out of that position. But for the last 5 years, I have been doing that. And chaplaincy work, which is what I was involved with, is very challenging. A chaplain essentially is a minister who works outside of a congregational setting and who does their work in a more specialized setting. So you have chaplains in hospitals, retirement homes, hospice, the military, different businesses and organizations hire chaplains. And for me, as a 24, 25-year-old stepping into chaplaincy and working with homeless folks, many who are coming off the street or coming straight out of prison into my office, that was a big shocker for me, especially because I grew up pretty sheltered. I had a great upbringing, and I was not exposed to a lot of the pain and suffering that I was finally able to start seeing with my very own eyes in that moment when I became a chaplain. And there was a lot of difficult conversations I had to have. There was a lot of difficult things that I saw that I would carry with me into my own personal life. Because when you see people suffering the way that I saw them suffering, not in Africa, not in some third world country, in our backyard, you see enough of that, it does something to you. It affects you. I have one instance where there was a young woman who I was counseling. She had come off of the street, and she was 18, 19 years old. She had been a prostitute for the last 2-3 years, just trying to make ends meet. And she dealt with a lot of abuse and a lot of pain. And I did my best in that moment that I sat with her. We sat for about 2 hours when she came into the BOC. And she opened up her heart to me, and I did my best to give her advice and to bring her comfort in that moment, and to help reassure her and to remind her that she has a purpose and to help her take steps towards her healing. And we had a wonderful conversation. 2 days later, we found her, one of our staff found her dead upstairs in her room. She had hung herself. She couldn't take it anymore. It was too much. I'm somebody who, I have the bad habit I've mentioned before of backtracking. So there's a lot of times, like, especially, and we're all so hard on ourselves. We're harder on ourselves than anybody else. You got to be gentle with yourself. That's something I'm learning, how to be more gentle and kind with myself. But there are times where I'll meet with people, and after I meet with them, I start backtracking and thinking about all the things I could have said better. All of the things that maybe if I would have approached it in this way, then maybe we could have had more progress. I already have had the bad habit of doing that. So imagine in this scenario, the backtracking that I did, the guilt that I felt, the shame that did I do something wrong here? What's going on? That's a lot to deal with. In one sense, I kind of felt a little bit responsible for that. Part of my job as well as a chaplain involved me following up with people who inquired about our homeless services through the website. And so I would follow up with these people. They haven't been contacted maybe for 24 to 48 hours because there's a lot of people that would continue to fill out those forms. And somebody decided to put me in charge because nobody else wanted to do this, because it really wasn't a great job. Because you would think, if you were homeless and you filled out a contact form online, you would think when you get a phone call from these people, you're going to hear good news. Hey, we got your information. You can come on in and we have everything set up for you. But that's not how it works, because Broward County has a system, and there's a certain way that things have to be done. There's certain hoops you have to jump through, and there's nothing that we could do to bend those rules. And so unless the county refers you to us, we can't take you in. So I would have to make these phone calls. Single mom. I got 3 kids. I have nowhere to go. I just lost my job. I don't have a car. I'm sleeping out in Fort Lauderdale. Can you help? Ma'am, I'm so heartbroken by, this situation and the circumstances that you're going through. Unfortunately, you're going to have to call this number. And then as soon as you start doing that, Imagine, put yourself in that position, So now I'm the bad guy, and I hate being the bad guy, but I'm having to do that, kind of shut the door a little bit. It's not shutting the door. I'm telling them where to go, but it made me feel some type of way is what I'm trying to say. And it was hard to have to do that over and over and over again. There were times where I would stay really late. I would do chapel services in the evening time. And at the homeless shelter, we would have overnighters come. That's what we called them, the overnighters. So these were people who weren't a part of our program, but they were allowed to sleep there overnight for 3 consecutive nights. Well, guess what? We have limited room. So we would allow people to come and they would stay at the shelter, but then there was a cutoff point. And if people aren't budging and they're not being nice to our security, or they're yelling at a staff, it's the chaplain's job to try and come and help bring some calmness into this situation and help kind of ground these people so that they don't lose themselves in this moment. It's very, very hard to do that kind of stuff. And for a while, I did not know how to deal with that pain other than by numbing myself to it. And what I noticed about myself, and I'm not proud to say this, and I think I had to go through this experience in order for me to tap into what I've been able to tap into now. But what happens when you respond to pain that way, by shutting yourself off, by not wanting to feel anymore, is that you start to lose your empathy. You become cold towards other people and their suffering. You can become heartless in your interactions with other people, because you cannot selectively numb your pain. If you choose to numb your negative emotions, you're also choosing to numbing yourself to the positive emotions. If you numb yourself to anger and sadness, you're also numbing yourself to joy and peace and happiness. Numbing, by the way, is anything that you do to avoid the experience of vulnerability. You numb your pain when you want to do anything but be open and transparent about what your feelings, because your feelings in that moment are way too heavy. Anybody ever been there before? I know. It's tough. It's tough to do that. But what we don't realize is that even when we put our guard up, when we put that big caution tape in front of our heart and we tell people, don't get close, even though we're preventing other people from hurting us, we're still hurting ourselves. Because we're hiding, and we weren't made to hide. Let me read to you this passage of scripture from the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus speaks these wonderful words. He says, when you hear what I say, you will not understand. When you see what I do, you will not comprehend. For the hearts of these people are hardened, and their ears cannot hear, and they have closed their eyes, so their eyes cannot see, and their ears cannot hear, and their hearts cannot understand, and they cannot turn to me and let me heal them. So yeah, you can harden your heart and you can keep yourself from experiencing pain, but by hardening your heart, you're also keeping yourself from experiencing true healing. When your heart is hardened, when your heart becomes mechanical like this, when you don't want to feel anymore, when you numb your pain, you're seeing, but you're not really seeing. You're hearing, but you're not really hearing. All you're truly seeing and all you're truly hearing is your own insecurities, your own fear, your own lack of self-worth, that then you begin to project onto other people. And I understand why we do this. But do you realize when you numb yourself from your pain, you're disconnecting from your own humanity? Because to be human is to feel. So to run away from our emotions, to push down our emotions as if they don't matter, to think that, because some of us have the thought where it's like, well, this isn't as bad as other people who are going through stuff, so this is insignificant. When we treat our pain like that, it can get exhausting carrying that around. You know, when you choose to go through life by yourself alone, I'm going to deal with this in isolation. I'm going to deal with this all by myself. It can get so exhausting. It's the weight of the world on your shoulder. And the whole reason why we do this, it's one big 4-letter word. The reason why we do this is because of fear. Fear. We are afraid. We fear. We fear that our feelings are too big. We fear that our emotions are too much to handle. We fear that we're not going to be able to keep it together if we talk about this stuff, that we're going to lose ourselves. We fear that in our vulnerability, we may be rejected. We fear not being approved by other people. And the truth is, we fear not being accepted by others because we have yet to accept ourselves. Because the moment you come to accept yourself with all of your flaws, you lose the fear of other people not accepting you. You know why? Because you don't need them to accept you anymore, because you've already accepted yourself. And then you come to realize that's all the acceptance that I've ever needed. But if you don't do that, what happens? The guard comes up. You get on the defensive. You put the caution tape in front of your heart. You put a wall all around your heart. Nobody can get close to me. But let me tell you something. When you numb your feeling, you're not getting rid of it. When you numb yourself from your pain, you're not solving the problems. You're just making them worse. All you're doing is burying your pain deeper. And it's only going to be a matter of time as that seed gets watered and more situations happen, that pain and all of those emotions that you've been hiding begin to rise up to the surface. So instead of numbing our emotions or running away from our emotions, what we need to do is learn how to lean into them, to listen to our emotions, to allow our emotions to become our teachers. Allow your emotions to be the indicator to you of your deepest human needs that are not being met in this moment. And you begin to be curious about yourself. And you ask yourself questions. This is not something that I was taught to do, especially as someone who grew up with religion. If anybody here grew up with religion, if you grew up with church, you were not taught to kind of have this relationship with your emotion. And if anything, you were taught to have an unhealthy relationship to your emotion. Maybe you heard something along the lines like this: your feelings are not reliable. Your feelings will deceive you. Your feelings are not telling you the truth. And for me, I thought living by faith meant, okay, I've got to hide that stuff, which meant I couldn't process that stuff, which meant I could never heal from that stuff. You got to be honest. You got to be open. You got to be vulnerable. How could Christianity, which was founded on the premise that when we are weak, God is strong, God saving the world through the foolishness of the cross, through a suffering man hanging, how could we ever think that we could experience our resurrection if we don't first go through crucifixion? So we have to be open, and we have to be honest, and we have to be real, and we have to be vulnerable. For me as a pastor, it's been the hardest thing for me to do. Nowadays, forget it. I'm an open book, you know. I mean, we meet for coffee, I'll tell you everything about, I have nothing to be ashamed of no more. My life is out, and I'm happy. I'm happy about it. I don't got nothing to hide. There is, what? For real. I'm here, and it feels good. But for so long, I did not have that. I did not have that. I cared too much about what other people thought about me. And even more so, I'll never forget one of my closest friends. This was when I was 21, 22, 23, just starting out my pastoral journey. Young kid. And there was a friend of mine who I felt I couldn't even share my deepest issues and struggles with him. This was my closest friend at the time. I couldn't even share my deepest struggles and emotions and feelings with him because what's going to happen to his faith? What's going to happen to his walk if he sees me all out of sorts? And so I thought, my mentality was, I got to be strong for this guy, which basically means I need to pretend. I got to act like I have it all together when I don't, because if I'm too vulnerable, if I'm too honest, if I share about this stuff, it may crush him. I put all that weight on my shoulders, and so I just stuffed things in. And I remember, I have clear memories of myself still living in my parents' house, crying myself to sleep at night sometimes because I felt so alone. I couldn't share anything with anybody, and it happens to be that my calling and my job requires that of me. Misery. And completely not true, right? Not true at all, but I was afraid. I was afraid of what would happen if I was really naked in front of somebody. And that's how most of us feel. Isn't that true for you? Like a lot of us, we feel like we have to be strong for everybody else around us. No, you got to be strong for yourself. And true strength is found in vulnerability. It is okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. You got to let yourself feel. You have to allow yourself to release whatever it is that you have inside of you, because as long as you hold on to it and you hide it and you're ashamed of it, it's going to eat you up alive from the inside out. I don't even have to say this. You already know it. So you're thinking, okay, fine, I've been feeling like this. I've been holding it in. I've been numbing my pain. What do I do? Vulnerability. You got to be real. You got to be honest. And even if you can't take that step with another human being, take that step with yourself. Be honest with yourself. At the very least, just be real with yourself. Start there. This is an issue. This is something I keep running away from. This is something that I keep hiding. This is how I'm pretending in this moment. Just start being real with yourself. Start there. Start with God. And then you can move that circle wider and wider if you feel the need to, when you feel the need to. But to carry all of that by yourself, my goodness, is tough. But I understand why people do it. It's like our defense mechanism. That's what happens when we enter into survival mode. You know, it's like I can't let anybody get close to me. And this is especially the case when it comes to relationships and with romance. Come on now. We know, like I've tried. I've given my heart to you and you ripped it to shreds. I've tried, and over again, I go through the same issues and the same problems, and everybody keeps hurting me and mistreating me. And so I can't let anybody in. And if I do, I'm just letting you know I got a big caution tape in front of my heart. So you got to know, I'm proud of those of you who at least do that. You know, because there are some people who, they don't, you know, they're very scared to let people in. But then eventually they find the courage to do it, but they let them know, look, I'm broken. And I've got issues, and I just want you to know that. Are you willing to stick with me through it? If you can't show yourself fully to another person, I mean, why are you with that person? Because the foundation of every relationship is what? It's trust, and it's honesty, and it's openness. That's what supports and provides the foundation for the whole thing. And then I know that this happens because I've done this a million times. When we're in that mindset of shutting ourselves off and becoming a machine and we harden our hearts, we end up thinking to ourselves, well, I don't want to experience pain, so I got to be the one who inflicts it. If I'm the one who does the hurting, then I won't be the one who gets hurt. And because and think about it, it's a lot easier for us to inflict pain than it is to experience it and to actually feel it, which is why we choose to go down that route without recognizing, as I already mentioned, that while we're doing that, all we're doing is hurting and harming ourselves. There's and by the way, when you do this, when you're guarded and when you have that wall up and you have the caution tape over your heart, now all of a sudden you become very insecure and suspicious of other people. And if you're not careful, you will allow a few moments of pain that you experienced in your past to become a lifetime of misery and of unhappiness. Byron Katie is this wonderful teacher who says, defense is the first act of war. I didn't understand this for a while, but now I do. Defense is the first act of war. What does that mean? When you are defensive as a human being, that means you're already expecting to be attacked. And because you're already expecting to be attacked, your guard is up, and that puts you on the attack. But we use defense as our justification. Isn't it true? What we end up saying is, they did it first. That's why I'm doing this. And we can play the who did it first game all day while we rip ourselves to shreds in the process. That's all just us justifying ourselves. No, they did it first. They hurt me first, and that's why I'm doing it. In the name of defense. Defense is the first act of war. So what is the solution to this kind of a lifestyle, right? So we don't have to be so defensive, a heart that's hardened. How can we get past this so that we're not always perceiving everything as an attack? Because by the way, again, when you're defensive and now you're expecting to be attacked, it is possible for you to start perceiving that something is an attack that isn't really an attack. But you and your insecurity and your fear, you take it that way. And so you got to think about that. The only solution to move us out from this space of hard-heartedness into open-heartedness is love. Love. And that love has to begin with a love that you give to yourself. Love does not perceive anything as an attack. Love is patient. Love is gentle. Love is kind. When you're operating out of love, you see all of life through a very, very different paradigm. Love is a risk, is it not? Love is a risk. If you put yourself out there, I'm not going to lie, you may get hurt. But eventually what you come to realize is, I don't have to be afraid of other people not accepting me or rejecting me when I've already accepted myself. It becomes less scary when other people say no, or when other people can't handle you in the fullness of who you are, when you're already okay with who you are. So that's why the solution always comes back to love, and that love has to begin with a love that you give to yourself. And maybe you feel like you're here this morning and you can't give that love to yourself, fine, you can't take that step. Start by opening up your heart and receiving the love of God that has already been given to you. That requires zero effort. That's a way better first step. Actually, I should have wrote that down in my notes. Just open yourself up to receive the unconditional love of God. Isn't that our deepest desire? To know and to be fully known by others? There's nothing that is more life-giving than being able to be fully yourself in front of another human being and still be loved and still be embraced and still be accepted. And you got to realize, if you've done that in the past and other people haven't been able to give to you that kind of love and that kind of acceptance, it's just because they haven't been able to give it to themselves. It's the only reason why. That can help you be a little more patient. Maybe it can help you be a little less angry. Maybe it can help you let go of some things. That's why love is powerful. That's why love can soften any heart, because love connects you to the power of forgiveness. You can forgive what you've been you can forgive people who have hurt you in the past. You can let go of all the things that you've been holding on to. And it's in your benefit to do so. You're not doing them a favor, you're doing you a favor. When I forgive, that's me saying, I'm not going to allow what you did to me to continue to dictate what happens to me now. You set yourself free through forgiveness. You may have to forgive yourself. Some of you may have to forgive yourself this morning. You've disappointed yourself and you've been hard on yourself, or you've made some mistakes that you wish you wouldn't have made, and it's gotten you into a pretty tight predicament right now. You may have to just forgive yourself. As you learn how to forgive others, if you learn how to forgive yourself, maybe you even have to forgive God and life for the hand that you were dealt. Listen, our Bible is filled with songs that were written by people who were mad and angry at God. Because obviously we know that, being mad at God is like, at least in my mind, I'm like, what is that going to do? Why? The whole point is, though, you got to express yourself. If it's in you, you got to get it out of you. If it's in you, you got to get it out of you. You can't go around your pain. You have to go through it. But when you allow love to soften you up, now fear goes away. All the fear goes away. Remember, fear is what is driving you into hiding. Love, perfect love, the scriptures say, casts out fear and drives out fear. So when you're no longer afraid of your pain, when you're no longer afraid of your issues, when you're no longer afraid of all of your weaknesses and your failings and your mistakes and your heartache, when you can love yourself enough to be real and honest with yourself, that's when transformation begins to happen in your life. And then you come to recognize, you know what? It's these experiences, these painful experiences, that end up making me who I am. So you can end up saying, like James does in the New Testament, I count it all joy when I fall into various trials and when I experience different tests and when I go through suffering. Why? Because I know what this is producing in my life. It's producing endurance. It's producing character. It's making me strong. It's revealing me to myself. It's waking me up. You have to suffer until you don't anymore. One teacher says pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. You're going to go through difficulties. You're going to go through pain. There will be challenges, but you get to decide how you frame it. You get to decide the meaning that you attribute to it. So are you attributing meaning from a place of fear? Or are you attributing meaning from a place of love? Are you framing this situation? Are you framing your past? Are you framing that story? Are you framing what happened to you through that lens of insecurity and lack of self-worth? Or are you framing it through the lens of grace? Are you able to recognize the gift that even that has been in your life? That's what love begins to allow you to do, little by little by little. Pain, really, when you really start tapping into this stuff, you actually start looking forward to the challenges. You actually start looking forward to the difficulties, because you know and understand that it's in those moments that you get refined. It's in those moments that God molds us and works on us. If we're willing to surrender, if we're willing to be weak for a little bit, God will show up with his strength. It's that simple. If you're willing to be weak, God will show up with God's strength. Something I've learned is that nothing external to me has the power to cause me to suffer. That power belongs only to me. It belongs only to me. One teacher says, choose not to be harmed and you will not be harmed. What do you mean? It's that easy? Well, it's not easy. No, it's not easy. But the point is, again, you get to decide how you're going to look at it. You get to decide how you're going to frame it. You get to decide what this situation is going to mean for me in my life. The scriptures say, love endures all things. Another translation says, love puts up with anything. And of course, that doesn't mean you don't have boundaries. You have to have boundaries. I'm not saying don't have boundaries in your life. But when you really start tapping into love, when you allow love to soften up your heart, you don't get upset about the same things you used to get upset about anymore. You're not perceiving everything that other people do to you as an attack. It was interesting. I was watching. Did I already talk to this group about that Netflix show? Or was that last service? Probably last service. So there's this really cool Netflix show called The Mind Explained. It's new. You should watch it. Some of you have seen it already. Yeah. So really, really cool stuff. And they had one episode on anxiety, and they had a comedian who deals with anxiety and depression, and she was talking about how there have been times where before she goes up to speak, she has a panic attack. She starts freaking out. And so because that has happened, she's seriously considered not being a comedian anymore, because that's a lot to deal with. She says that even though she's been doing this for years, there's still moments where her hands will tremble. Her hands are just always doing this. She's like, I don't know what to do. But then she said this phrase that really stood out to me. She's like, yeah, my hand shakes like this, but the weakness is the brand. The weakness is the brand. Her jokes, her comedy comes from that place of weakness and vulnerability. Like, she's honest about all this stuff, and you can watch it to see her a little bit in action. But I bring that up because that phrase, that really stuck out to me. My weakness is my brand. It's like, now you're reframing it. Now you're reframing it. My weakness now is not something I need to be ashamed of. My weakness is not something that I need to hide from, or that I need to hide from other people. No. This is the brand. Like, this is it. Being human is about recognizing we're broken, yes, but we're gracefully broken. We're wounded, yes, but we're also whole. All right, we experience crucifixion, but we also experience resurrection on the other side. And then that's when we can begin to say with Paul, I boast in my weaknesses. I boast in my, if you're going to boast about anything, boast in your weaknesses. Adam and Eve, in that story in the book of Genesis, when they eat the forbidden fruit, the scriptures say that they recognized their nakedness and they became ashamed, and then they hid from God. And then God walks in the cool of the garden, and he comes across Adam and Eve. And the first question that God asks to these two people are, why are you hiding? Why are you hiding? Who told you that this was an issue? Why are you hiding? That's probably the question that the Spirit is posing to you this morning. Why are you hiding? What are you hiding from? Ask yourself that question and answer it honestly. That's where healing can begin. Why are you hiding? Why do you feel like you can't share this, like you can't be open about it, like you have to act like you got it all together when you know you don't in this area? Why? Why are you hiding? And allow God to work in your heart from there. So my desire, my goal, my hope for each and every one of you today is that you would love yourself enough to let yourself feel. That's it. And I don't know what that's going to look like for you this week. Maybe that means I'm just going to take a moment and just cry to myself in the car, or I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, or I'm going to go get the help that I need, or I'm going to write some stuff down in a journal that nobody is ever going to see in their life except me. Whatever it is that you need to do, love yourself enough to let yourself feel. Love yourself enough to be human. You don't have to be so strong. You don't have to be so strong. Let God be strong for you. And that's not just like a saying. You can really live like that, where you can be okay with your faults and with your weaknesses and with your insecurities and with everything you think that is a problem. You can be okay with it because you know this ain't my show. It's not about me anyways. It's what God can do in me. It's what God can do through me. That's why Paul said, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me, and Christ who lives through me. Christ is the wounded one. And the way Christ is going to communicate his love and his goodness and his grace and his kindness and his wisdom out into the world through you is when you can tap into your woundedness too. We're not hiding anymore. Love yourself enough to let yourself feel. Love yourself enough to forgive. Love yourself enough to let go. Love yourself enough to receive the love that has always and already been yours. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much that we can be honest and real and open and vulnerable with you. Help us to see ourselves the way that you see us, as masterpieces. Even with our faults, even with our failures, even with our mistakes, even with the pain that we're carrying, even with the shame that I hold, you see me and you see a masterpiece. Help me to start seeing myself that way too. Help me to start seeing myself that way too. God, in this moment, we know that you are with us. And so we have nothing to fear. Help us to no longer hide from ourselves and from others, but to find freedom in our vulnerability. Soften our hearts again, God. Help us to give love another chance. We know with you, anything is possible. And so we ask you to continue to work on us as we work on ourselves too. We pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. Love you so much. So glad that you're here. Have a great rest of the week. We'll catch you next Sunday.